Hey everybody, it's Coach Hughes here with the Be Best You podcast. But I'm really excited to have on here. Was able to make acquaintance with Nick Savarse here. Nick, welcome, sir. Glad to have you
Thank
on.
you. It's great to be here, Coach Hughes.
Yeah,
Excited to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
yeah, we appreciate it. And lots of times I'll have an author on or somebody else in that. And I just really felt it was important that you and I talked. We made some connections. We have some common interest. Obviously, people who know me, JT, my son, has autism. Any organization that's dealing with any kids, any kid with special needs, especially autism, is something that's close to my heart. I am a football fan. When I was a young kid, I'm only 5'6.5". I like to say 5'7", round it up.
Yeah,
But
round it up.
I like to say I had a pretty good arm, but I had a great arm when I had what I used to call a flutie ball, and the flutie ball was a football that was a little smaller than a normal football, and I can send that ball pretty far.
Nice.
Uh, so anybody who doesn't know Doug Flutie will somehow look that up. But he's famous for playing college ball, but also played in the NFL, CFL, and done a lot of other stuff. But first thing, I just want to do this is can you kind of just tell everybody a little bit what is your position and maybe a little bit how you got involved with Doug and his foundation.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks so much. Yeah, so I'm the executive director of the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation for Autism. This foundation was founded by former NFL and CFL and Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Doug Flutie and his wife Lori 25 years ago, actually, celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, after their son Dougie Jr. was diagnosed with autism. Dougie's now around 30 years old. And so they decided that they wanted to help families who were struggling. At the time, there wasn't this level of autism awareness and acceptance and programs that there are now. Not that there are enough now, but certainly we've come, light years in the last 25 years in terms of acceptance and opportunities and programs. But anyways, back then there wasn't a lot. And so Doug and Lori thought, well, let's use our platform, some level of celebrity to raise awareness, to raise funds, and really help families affected by autism live their lives to the fullest. And we've really stayed true to that, our whole time in existence. And while the foundation has grown and we're doing all sorts of different programs, we really just try to stay true to Doug and Lori's vision. And so, me personally, I've been here now for about 5.5 years. Um, and it's just been great. I've always worked in the disability field, so to speak. I taught special ed for a little while, worked in job development for people with disabilities, worked with Special Olympics for a long time. And I had interacted with the Flutie Foundation a number of times throughout my career. And so when the position opened up, it was kind of a natural next fit for me.
Yeah. Obviously, we got to know each other through an organization I work with, Jersey Mike's. Obviously, they do a lot of partnering with you guys up there. But one of the things in staying true to the Be Best You is in order to again be the best version of ourselves. Um, we're always trying to improve, and one of them you find is with leaders. What we want to do is we want to help other people become best versions of themselves. I mean, and what you're doing by getting involved in organizations and having a passion working with people with disadvantaged. My wife calls them diverse abilities because when you use the word disability, sometimes I don't know if that sits real well on us sometimes. Um,
Yeah, this is like a negative connotation.
yeah,
It's a root word for, yeah. So again, I've heard differing abilities as well, but yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense.
Just have a little fun with it, but it just
Yeah.
kind of softens that up a little bit. But why did you get into what drew you to this career really?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It wasn't intentional. I was 20 years old. I was kind of in between college and I'd gone to University of Massachusetts Amherst and hadn't found what I wanted to do. I ended up moving out to Colorado for what was supposed to be a summer to live with my brother. And I was working as a line cook at a restaurant. And I was sort of like, what's my next? I didn't know what the next move was going to be. I wanted to do something. I couldn't quite figure it out. So I decided to do some volunteer work. I did some volunteer work at a local daycare and at a recreational program for people with disabilities. And it really just stuck with me. I'll tell it if you don't mind if I could tell a
Yeah,
brief
please.
story
Yeah.
about it. So the program was where we would go up into the mountains and do snowshoeing. I don't know if you've heard of snowshoeing, but it's a snow sport in Colorado. And So, anyways, I signed up to once a week go up into the mountains with this group of people with disabilities and snowshoe. So I went the first week, it was great. I went the second week, and I kind of, it was like my alarm went off early, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to go or not. And I rode my bike to where we were supposed to meet, and we were meeting at this local school, and we were going to take a van up into the mountains. And I was running late, and I could see everyone waiting by the bus, and I parked my bike on the side of the school, and I walked around. I turned the corner, and everyone came running up to me like they were so pumped to see me, and not because it was me, but just they, somebody. So two things happened in that moment, right? Everyone was like, "Nick, so happy to see you." I was getting high fives from the people we were serving, and then the staff member who was in charge came up to me, and she was like, "Oh man," she's like, "Thank you so much for coming. I didn't think you were going to show up." And it was sort of like in that moment, I realized two things, like, or really one thing, like, this type of work is needed, and it's also of so much value, like just to have someone show up. It's not because I brought any special talent to the equation, so to speak, but just really someone who's going to commit to showing up and making a difference in the lives of people with disabilities. And so that was the start, and that morphed into becoming a teacher's aide in a school, and then getting a job working in job development for people with disabilities, going back to college, and finally getting the degree. It's kind of spiraled into there.
Well, it's funny. So one of the things in doing this journey, like a lot of it, some of it's just personal. Like I'm on that personal journey, to become the best version of myself, and we're always, I'm recognizing that you're always on it. And I had a really nice conversation with a gentleman I interviewed, a guy named Jim Lord. Got to give him some credit. And what I got from that, it kind of speaks to what you just said, is a lot of, so you go to Colorado, you're trying to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life, and you go out there and you have a job. And what we find is a lot of people, not everybody gets an opportunity to have a job. So a job is definitely a privilege. Then if you can take that job and make it a career, that's unique in itself. We talked about that. But then if that career can be, if you can be passionate about that, that's really unique. But when you can find purpose in that passion, that's when the magic happens. And I think for you, and I watch how you operate. I spent some time around you, and how much you care about that organization, and not just the organization, but the people that it's benefiting. I would definitely say that not only do you have a job and you've made a career out of it, and I'm sure it's your passion, but in becoming the best version of yourself, you're really ultimately chasing happiness. And would you say that this is kind of, and maybe you've never thought of it this way, but would you say this is your purpose?
I mean, yeah, I haven't really thought of it that way, and I appreciate, the kind remarks there. But yeah, I think certainly from a professional standpoint, it's become my purpose, and it's so much easier to. There's a lot of work in this field, and there's a lot of fights you have to fight, and there's a lot of challenges. But yeah, to your point, um, when you find something that's authentic to you, and it just feels really authentic to me personally,
Yeah.
it's easy to translate that into passion for the job. And um and and it helps, the team that I work with, the staff and our volunteers and everything. I think all of us really find purpose in our work, because we're all mission centered people, but we all can bring our authentic selves to it. So yeah, it's I think, yeah, I guess you could say I've certainly found a purpose in this work.
Yeah, because I mean, when you're dealing with a nonprofit, and there's obviously has to be some type of compensation, and you always hear the negative side of, you don't always hear the negative side, but you do hear some stories about organizations that, maybe people are getting paid more than they want. But I truly believe that people get um into that field, if you will, or even that career, and it's not because you're chasing a paycheck. You're doing it for a bigger purpose and a bigger cause. And I can see that. You can see that with the Flutie organization, and even the people that we associate with in the company I'm with. That's what we're looking for, is this idea of giving back and not necessarily doing that to get anything in return. And that kind of segues into a question I talked about earlier, but there's a lot of companies out there that are always looking for an angle to get more customers, get more recognition. So the charitable thing is something that you can just, tie your wagon to, if you will. But a lot of them aren't doing it for the right reason. And you have some companies that are trying to be philanthropic, and then they'll partner with an organization. But what would you say to a small business that's looking to get involved with a charity, um, for the right reasons? What would be some ways for them to go about doing that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that to your point, I think you can't necessarily lead with the notion of, we want this to be better for our bottom line, right? It's we want to do it because it's the right thing to do, and we want to do it because, and now there are tons of business benefits. Don't get me wrong. You can impact your bottom line, and there's lots of data out there today that says, this new generation of workers sort of mandates that you as a company are philanthropic and are community oriented. So, again, there's certainly business benefits to partnering with charity and with local organizations in your community. But again, I think that it's it's more about, there has to be kind of a core value and authentic to who you are. But if you are looking for a charity out there, I think it's really just a matter of finding relationships in your community. Looking at who's involved with the charity, what are other organizations that are working with them, who's on their board of directors, or what have you. You can always find, you know, I think word of mouth is the best way to go about doing it. Who has a good reputation in the community? What charities are having a deeper impact? I think there's too much focus on, oh, let's look at their financials and let's go on charitynavigator.org and see how they're ranked. I think it's more of who's making impact in the community, and on top of that is what charity is going to put forth some effort for you. If you're going to work with them and a charity is just going to say, hey, thanks for the donation, we'll see you next year. Well, that's not going to work. I think any partnership between a business and a charity has to go two ways, and the charity should be, obviously the charity has work to do every day in executing their mission, but they should be able to integrate your company in a myriad of different ways. Be it, can your company provide volunteers? Can they promote, whatever it is they're doing on social media? There's a lot of ways to activate. We're big into corporate activation, company activation with our partnerships. And so I think companies should look for charities that are willing to activate in partnership. Um,
Yeah, and then again, the part that's important because one is you don't want if the charity isn't supposed to be promoting your business, and you don't want the business just being the only one to promote the charity. There has to be that 50-50 where both are doing their part to get the word out there and into the community. I don't know if I ever told this, but when my son got diagnosed, this is he's 24 now, so he was 22, and autism, same with Doug's son. It was around, but no one really knew about it. And for me, what happened was I decided to start my own foundation, and I was involved with a couple other organizations trying to learn about it. But then I started my own foundation, primarily for triathletes and runners. And for about 5 years, I had a thing called the JT Foundation. And but what happened was I rather than and then a lot of organizations came to me and said, "Oh, why don't you support whether it be the local New Jersey one? It could be a larger chapter of a national organization." They all wanted our foundation to promote their initiative. And then what happened was, I'll give you just one example. We had two New Jersey ones, and I think they were one organization, and then they split, and they started bad mouthing each other. I realized that I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to just promote iPads. I don't want to just promote the therapy. I don't just want to promote this or that. I want to just give money to as many people as we can. And what I did was I raised money, and then we picked 5 or 6 organizations. Then we bought iPads for local schools. But the politics of you have $1 and you have 15 people who want a piece of that dollar. And
yeah.
how do you choose? And I think that's the thing too. When local businesses are trying to pick an organization, they usually pick something that's close to them personally. And what are some ideas of how would you go about picking a charity that would that would not just support your business, but you would feel good supporting itself?
Yeah. So, and you talk about this from a business lens. If you're the company, you're looking to support a charity. Yeah, and we do this too at the Flutie Foundation because we provide one of the things we do is provide grants to other charities. So we're constantly looking at other organizations and how do we support them, and it's a combination. Certainly you want to look at metrics and the impact that an organization has in a community. Like if you say, hey, we're supporting, we're job development programs for people with autism, say, then you want to make sure they have some metrics to back that up. That's how many jobs did you place, this sort of thing. But I still think it goes back to people and relationships. We at the Flutie Foundation, we've changed a little bit about our grant distribution has evolved in the sense that it used to be really tied to the grant proposal and how well written is it, and does are the objectives hit and all that. And more so we're moving to a year-round relationship with people. Like, let's get to know you, let's go visit your site and see what it is you're up to, and how can we help you in other ways outside the grant cycle. And so it's a more organic and authentic process, I think, and it has to do with relationships with people involved and the leaders and that sort of thing. So I don't know. I think, again, if you're a business, it's not just going on a website and seeing what a charity does. It's talking to the people there and then making, seeing if there's that validation of connections in the community who can authentically say, yeah, this organization does really good work.
Yeah, so my class today and yesterday we talk about, we're in the people business. We just happen to sell a particular product. And then you have procedures that are there to protect, the product. And if you have the right people, they're going to follow the procedures and profits as a result. So there's this whole little um, kind of roadmap that I lay out. But there's a gentleman by the name of Danny Meyer. I don't know if you know of him before. He's a restaurateur, wrote a book called Setting the Table. And there's a little quote that he has in one of these little interviews, which goes to what you're saying. In the restaurant or the hospitality business, it's about collecting dots to connect the dots. And what you just said right there is so true. And that's, when you want to bring a business partner in, when you want to hire somebody, when you want to, build a business relationship, you don't want to rush into that because it looks all kind of shiny and sexy on the outside. You want to be able to take your time to build that relationship and collect as many dots as you can so you can connect the dots. And what I just heard you say there, it just goes right to what we talk about in business when it comes to picking an employee or picking a charity. It's about, you know, dot connecting. Do we
Yeah.
have enough things in common, right?
Yeah, we're big. We're big Venn diagram people too at the Flutie
Okay.
Foundation. Like, okay, we're thinking of doing a specific initiative. It's like, how does this overlap with this other initiative? And if it doesn't at all, like, how does it overlap with other strategies you have? So, for example, we do a thing around we like to elevate the voice of people with autism, right? And so we have tons of programs where instead of me going out and giving a speech, let's have somebody who has autism go out and represent the organization. And so can we integrate, and that's kind of a program we have called Stars of the Spectrum. And can we integrate that into another program we're doing, which is say, like, we have a 5K race series, the Flutie 5K. So okay, so can we get the Stars of the Spectrum to go and give a speech to open up at the Flutie 5K? And how can, it's just sort of like, how can we bring all these people together? Or, oh, we gave an organization a grant
Yeah.
in Tilton, New Hampshire. Oh, well, there's a Jersey Mike's in Tilton, New Hampshire. They are one of our great partners. Let's go have lunch there. So we can integrate, the partnership with Jersey Mike's, or name a company, and the organization we're doing. So we're big on, kind of, to your point, connecting these dots, collecting these dots, and putting them together in a strategic way that helps the foundation and the impact of the foundation grow, but also, helps those other groups that we're connected to.
Yeah, and I just go back to, the best leaders you hear about are good listeners, and there's people and organizations out there talking all the time, but it's not so much the talk, it's the action behind the talking. People are always saying, "Oh, we're doing this, we're great here, we're the best at that." But then when you pull the curtain back, you're like, yeah, but that's what you're saying. That's not what you're doing. And I never really thought of that before. Yeah, I mean, so you're kind of doing the same thing with your charity, is you're connecting local organizations with local businesses, and seeing how you can cross over. I love the Venn diagrams. Yeah, I'm a visual learner, so I get those pretty quickly.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. So it's just like, how does this? So any strategy we have or idea that comes up, it's sort of like, well, how does this? If this can hit in the center of a bunch of different bends, then we're onto something. And if it doesn't, then it's like, okay, maybe we don't execute on that program or that sort of thing.
Yeah. Another thing too is, with a lot of businesses out there, you hear about the employee crisis, whatever people want to call it, right? The more I talk, the more I research, the more I realize we don't really have an employee problem. I think what we have is a leadership problem. And I think that a lot of people think kids don't have to work today, and a lot of them don't because of the finances of the economy of things are. But I think if you create a business that kids want to work at, it doesn't make a difference whether they need to or not. If they want to work there, they will. And you said something earlier, which is really true. That what's important to young people today, and generations will have different things that'll motivate them. Maybe 30, 40 years ago, it was about upward mobility, it was about pay, greed is good, all that. Today, it's about giving back, having the opportunity to give back, being involved with something that's bigger than themselves, being involved with core organizations that have a broader purpose than just profits. Um, speak to that a little bit about what you're seeing and out there as far as volunteerism or what businesses or people need to do to be able to fulfill that want, that need.
Yeah, I mean, I think you spoke to it. The data is, there's tons of data out there that suggests that, yeah, you're right. This generation, even I don't now we're into the next. I'm Gen X, I think,
Yeah.
and then there's millennials, and then there's Gen Z. But millennials and Gen Z both, they identify. Studies have been done. That's to your point. That's the number. That's a number one thing. That's a big thing. Is like it's not just about going to work, getting a paycheck, and coming home, they want that connection with people, connection to community, and that sort of thing. So yeah, we're certainly seeing that as it relates to companies that want to support the philanthropic sector, and then just as also just opportunities to be their authentic selves and to work for a higher purpose, I think too. So even like inside the walls of the Flutie Foundation, say our staff, we really try to um, make sure that everyone feels that sense of purpose, and we're not just delegating tasks. We're saying, hey, here's an initiative, you own this, like bring your authentic self to it, bring your ideas to it. We obviously want results and all this sort of thing, but it's sort of like I think this generation wants to be in on the high level strategy, if that makes sense, in on the
Yeah.
purpose, not just like, hey, here's your job task, execute it, punch the clock, go home. It's like, again, it's sort of like they want to know the why, I
Yeah.
guess. They want to know the why behind it. And so to the extent that you as an employer can give them that why, and again, if you're a business, partnering with a charity is a huge way to give that why, and providing volunteer opportunities is. But I think you got to be cognizant of that with people coming into the workforce today.
Yeah, not just that, but I mean, and now just take autism and the prevalence of it. And again, I go back to when my son was diagnosed. I think it was like 1 in 66. Then it went to like 1 in 120. No, 1 in 166, then 1 in 121. And then I think it's, if I'm not, I mean, and it's funny, I don't really pay attention to it as much because right now my son is an adult. We're
Yep.
beyond that. But what are some of the newest stats that are out there? And again, I think, why is autism an organization or a cause that people should get behind? Because I think when people do hear some of the numbers that I think you're a lot closer to, uh, I think it's pretty alarming, the prevalence of autism. So the why to me is pretty clear, because if we don't do something to, I'm not saying cure autism or find the cause of it, but help people segue into as normal life as possible. What are some of the latest stats, numbers that you're hearing?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's now 1 in 38. It was 1 in 44 was the last CDC. And I think they're saying it either came out recently or they're projecting that the next time it comes around, it's 1 in 38 people affected by autism, or have an autism diagnosis. So no one really knows the scientific answers to why the prevalence is rising. Obviously, we're testing more and all this sorts of thing. But it's it's alarming because there aren't services established to meet the needs of all people. Because as you know, the autism is such a spectrum, right? And so the other stat within that is, I believe, of the 1 in 44, 1 in 38 is 26%, 25, 26% have profound autism, right?
Mhm.
Which means that, which the definition of that is, you will need, require 24/7 care throughout the course of your life, right? So
Yeah.
that's, so we at the Flutie Foundation, we obviously serve the whole spectrum, and we have people who have profound autism. Dougie is an example of that. Dougie's happy, healthy, but he has some significant challenges. He's nonverbal. He lives a great and happy life, but again, will require 24/7 care throughout the course of his life, right? And we also have people on the other end of the spectrum who we work with who, um, you know, have many challenges, but also are, probably going to, work a full-time job and maybe even get married, maybe even have a family of their own, So um, it's a wide spectrum, but all ends of the spectrum are not being served to the extent that they need to be, or funded to the extent that they need to be. And in particular, the profound end of the autism
Sure.
spectrum, really oftentimes gets nudged out in the conversation.
Well, then you talk about, the labor force and how hard it is to find people. And if you're thinking of it, if today 1 in 38 people will be born in this umbrella of this, or the spectrum umbrella. Well, what does that say about the next 10, 15 years from now? That's a lot of people who are going to be eligible for the workforce. So
Right.
companies need to start thinking about how we can integrate individuals that have, whether it's intellectual disability. Like, so my son, for example, who you got to meet,
Yeah.
he would need a full-time job aide. We have full custody of him. He'll be under our care for the rest of his, our lives, certainly. But a lot of organizations don't know how to integrate somebody
Right.
with special needs and make them functional and still be profitable, Uh,
Yeah. But I think you bring up a point, like, because there is this workforce shortage, right? Where companies are like, we can't find employees. Yet on our end of the spectrum, no pun intended on spectrum,
yeah.
is the stats say 70% of people with disabilities are unemployed or underemployed. So you think it's this natural, hey, here's an untapped labor force, let's go after it. And full acknowledgement, there are challenges that people in the spectrum face, so, and people with other disabilities. So there needs to be, kind of intermediaries, job coaches, and that sorts of things, and programs to integrate this. But they are out there, and so we've got to, we do our part, our small part at the Flutie Foundation to work with job development organizations. And but I think, to your point, from the company standpoint, I think your audience is people in the business world. Consider that consider this untapped workforce. And yes, on the front end, you might have to put up a little more, you put a little more resource into it, whether it's through the job interview process, the job training process, and that sort of thing. But it will reap rewards, because
Uh,
the other statistics sort of say that a lot of people with autism and other disabilities, they tend to stay at their jobs way longer,
mm.
because they really realize how important it is, and it gives that sense of pride and value that they may have been lacking even throughout their upbringing, just because they've always felt isolated in schools and all that sort of stuff. So if you're willing to put in a little more work at the front end and work with community organizations that help with job development, I think it'll be rewarding for companies on the back end and on the bottom line.
Yeah, I know there's recently, and I'll actually try to share the link, or at least maybe include the video that you sent recently of two brothers who work for a franchise, Jersey Mike's franchisee up in your market. And it's not just giving them an opportunity to have an opportunity to work, but the what it's done for the other employees. And when customers come in and they see that, so there's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
um, Maybe it's hard to measure that because I'm paying two people who, who can only do half the job of what a typical person can do. And everyone's always looking at that kind of the bottom line of how much it's costing me. But the the cost, benefit is something that, really is kind of like, why are we looking at that? And I think more companies need to look to employ, um, people with special needs out there.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, again, there is data out there around employee morale, ticking up a quantifiable, in a quantifiable way around, companies that do prioritize this. And there's a lot of creativity in the job disability world too. Is there's like carving out. So you might have a job description where somebody with an intellectual disability might not be able to do the whole job, but look at 10 job descriptions across your organization, and can you carve out 10% of this job, 10% of this job, 10% of this job? Then you have 100% job tasks that are being taken care of by this person. So there is a lot of creativity in this space, and so um, there are solutions. There's solutions.
I look at two stories, two ends of the spectrum. I remember when my son was first diagnosed. We lived literally across the street from the grammar school that he would have attended and was going to attend. And when the school didn't have the programs for him, which a lot of schools do and don't, um, we realized that we were going to have to move him to another school. And it was the end of the school year. I think he was maybe going into first grade at this point. I don't think it was in second. I think it was after kindergarten. And I just remember thinking, oh man, they're going to pull up in the short bus in front of my house, and my son's going to walk there and get in the bus and drive to another school system when the school is right there. And I remember that whole summer, I just was a wreck. And first day, I'm a wreck. And goodbye, I'm watching JT walk to the bus, and he was happy as a lark. He gets on the bus. He could care less. I had worked myself into this, perspective of, oh, I was going to think there's something, something wrong with him. Um, and so what I put limitations on what JP's abilities were, and you deal with a lot of guilt on a lot of different levels as a parent with it. But on the other side is, I think there's also business owners that will look at a person like JT and say, well, he can't do this, he can't do this, he can't do this, he can't do this, instead of saying, well, what can he do?
Yeah,
And what I didn't want JT to do was get the, typical, bag groceries, because I felt that was, or getting the shopping carts from the shopping, and then he's just going to fold clothes, and that's going to be JT's existence. And when you give these kids an opportunity beyond what you think their limits are, it's amazing what they can do. Can do way more than when we're very protective. Any parents out there will tell you, we don't do it on purpose, but we don't want our kids to get hurt, right?
yeah, yeah. No, yeah. There's ample opportunity, and you brought up Josh and Brian. I think they're the perfect example of working
Yeah,
at the Simsbury, Connecticut, Jersey Mike's location. And again, I think that their mom had a profound story in that video, saying they put in an application and they never thought they'd hear back, and then they got the job and they never thought it would last more than a month, and
yeah.
lo and behold, we're 4 years in, and the holistic impact that sort of has brought, and but to your point, the mom, similar to you, was just you've been on that emotional roller coaster, right, for 20 something years. And it's you know I can't imagine, because I'm not in that position, but I know that it's raising a child in this society, I can only I hear stories all the time, but all the challenges that brings, that um oftentimes might inhibit your ability to kind of even see the potential in your own child, right? So
But you know
it's
what,
tough.
though? I think that the generation we talked about how they care about that now, the amount of organizations that are out there, a lot of it's kind of self-inflicted, I'll say. I think one of my wake-up calls was early on when JT was first diagnosed. I went to a support group or whatever it was, and I said to, and there's some controversy on this as well, because I've heard an opposite side of this recently. But I said to this lady, very nice lady, um, my son's autistic. And whenever you say that to somebody and they would say, well, no, I think he's going to outgrow it. Or, all boys are slower than girls. And, you want to punch people sometimes, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah,
But,
yeah,
so when she said, no, what's your son's name? And I said, JT. She goes, he's not autistic. He's JT. He has autism.
yeah,
And it flicked the switch with me where I was like, oh yeah. So
yeah,
JT is way more than just his diagnosis, right? And
yeah,
I think that that's what you see, and I know that's what you see with the people that you come across, is that they're way more than members of the Doug Flutie organization. They're
Yeah.
talented, amazing, people. And that's the thing I got to give. I watch you. Um, I see the joy, I see the love you have for each one and everybody in your organization as well. And that's a testament to you and then the Doug Flutie organization as well. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, thanks, appreciate that. Yeah, and we do. We see, we person first, right? We see the person before the diagnosis. And yeah, you alluded there are people across the because now there's 1 in 38 people have autism, so that brings a diversity of opinions.
Sure.
And so yeah, there's people in the autism spectrum who say yes, I am autistic, and then there are others
Yeah.
who prefer person first language. I'm a
Yeah.
person with autism, right? So and we deal with that a lot as well. But the key is allowing people to be their individual and authentic selves, and
Yeah.
acting accordingly from there, so to speak.
Yeah, so kind of again, the premise of the podcast, it goes all over, and I just love to talk. And I think there's a bunch of little really cool nuggets in here for anybody who's going to listen to it. But I think kind of been trying to end most of them with, in order to lead others, which you are a leader of an organization, you're always working on becoming the best version of yourself. And what are some things that you do or you have learned over these years, and we're still learning to take care of yourself? Because when you're giving to so many people, you're and you don't give back to yourself, we perceive that as us being selfish. When and I know that when we don't give back, we don't fill our own cup. We can't fill other people's cups. So, what's
Yeah.
some advice to someone like yourself who is obviously has a lot of empathy, has a lot of compassion for people who can't do stuff for themselves? But how do you take care of you? How do you take care of Nick?
Oh yeah, good question. I probably could be better at that. I try to exercise with some level of regularity. We adopted the Flutie Foundation a real family first mentality, which is we have a heavy workload. Everyone works too many hours, but we're still family first. So it's really meaning, if it's Wednesday at noon and you got to deal with a family issue, go deal with your family issue. Don't no questions asked. Or, if we've worked a lot over a certain course of time. So and we try to involve our family in all the work that we do. My kids are out volunteering and that sort of thing. But as it relates, taking care of myself, I think it's just, like I said, I try to exercise and, make sure that I have time in my own personal life for time with my kids. I'm a coach, so I coach my kids soccer and basketball and all that sort of stuff. So, but could probably learn to do a little bit better at
Yeah.
the whole self-care end of things. I think we all make ourselves way too busy in this modern world we live in, between work and um, you know volunteer work and just so much going on. My kids are involved in so many different activities. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a bigger thing where, we were looking for, and we talk about this in my class. It's everybody thinks life work balance. You're supposed to have life and work in balance. And there's a guy, Dan Thurman, who kind of threw a wrench in it and says, well, you should be balancing in life. And there's going to be times that, work is going to need a little more of your attention, and because the kids are okay, and then there's going to be
Yeah,
time where you're going to have a kid that's going to have school issues or emotional or dating issues or whatever, great issues. You know what? Work's got to be. And he talks about how a tightrope walker is never looking down. They're always looking forward and they're always balancing. And I think that's something too, is when you're somebody that's always motivating, trying to inspire, trying to lead others to whether it be meet an objective, or be best version of themselves. If you don't take care of yourself, then you're being selfish. And I think that's the premise of what I wanted to start this podcast about, was because I think everybody out there is trying to um, accomplish a goal, but a big part of it is if you accomplish that goal in the end and you're not healthy, what's the purpose?
right.
You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
you know, but you know, well, I appreciate it. I've been wanting to get you on, I with the Flutie organization, it's the Doug Flutie Foundation.org, right?
Yeah, so it's
Flutie.
flutiefoundation.org is the website. Yep. And our technical name is Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation for Autism. Doug and Lori sort of say like, hey, Doug's like, I played football. I've got my legacy, and
Yeah,
this foundation is Dougie Jr.'s legacy. This is the
yeah.
work that he's done in the world. And Doug and Lori talk about how this sort of has superseded Doug's own, football legacy. But yeah, FlutieFoundation.org, or you can find us, Google us on, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff.
Yeah, and you do stuff, for the specifically for the organization, but a lot of the monies you raise, actually, you will grant out to other organizations, and they can find out about by contacting you guys, through the Fluke
Yeah,
website, be
yeah,
the
yeah, absolutely. And we're all about partnerships, be that with corporations, like our great partnership with Jersey Mike's and many others, but also partnerships in the autism community, because we realize it's such a, it takes, the old, it takes a village, right? So,
yeah,
in order to work to provide, opportunities for all people with autism, it takes a village, and we all need to come together. So we're open to collaboration and partnership and
okay.
opportunity across the board.
And you mentioned the 5K run, and I did see that they're not all just in New England area, right? There's some 5K. I think there was one. I think Doug lives in Florida. I know there was something in Florida.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Flutie 5K, our flagship location is right outside of Boston in Natick, Massachusetts, but we probably have about, I don't know, just this fall alone, as we talk, we're in October right now, but
Yeah.
we have 10 to 12 all over the country. It's sort of a nationwide movement where we're working with
Okay.
organizations across the country. So we have one in, like, we just this past weekend we had one around Boston, and we had one in Waco, Texas, with in partnership with the University of Baylor University.
Awesome.
Yeah, we've got Salt Lake City coming up this later this month. We do have a few in Florida between now and the spring. So that's on our website as well. Just or Google Flutie 5K. I
Okay.
think flutie5k.org might work as well, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, so it's a really neat kind of a nationwide movement that's happening to celebrate autism, raise funds for local organizations. The funds stay local in the different
Okay.
communities that raise them. So it's cool.
Yeah, because that's a big thing. And I had a 5K, and you said something earlier in the interview where, when I first started the foundation, every family and friends were involved. I started a 5K. I had more than enough volunteers. And then as the years went on, volunteers started going after things that were personal to them. And I ran out of volunteers. So I had to cancel my 5K. But that's something too, that if there's any listeners here where, there's a lot of people want to have a 5K and they want to run it in their own area, but maybe there's some way that they can partner with you guys, that you can also keep some of the monies local, is what you're saying. So
Yeah, yeah. And so we provide kind of the infrastructure. We give them the fundraising website. We help with the logistics and all this sorts of thing, and we work with local organizations who, again, that's our motto. It's like the money's raised through us, but we distribute it back to them. So it's
oh,
for organizations who are like, I don't have the wherewithal. We're like, well, we'll provide the administrative and logistical structure. And it's a nice partnership. It's really a win-win for everybody.
yeah, and remember you told me that way back when we first met, and I thought that was a great model where, again, it's not just about how you can benefit your organization, but I think you're also how you can help other organizations with their cause.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
Well, awesome. I appreciate it, and I will, once I put everything together. I'll even add that little clip of the two brothers there, and then give everybody the information so they can reach out to you guys and learn more about autism, but also see how they can get involved with you guys if they choose. So,
That'd be awesome. Thanks. I really appreciate being on.
all right, yeah, me too. I really appreciate it, and stay on here after this. But this is Coach Hughes, and I appreciate it, and we'll see everybody soon.